You gonna chair?
Okay.
Do you want me to chair?
Sure.
Or Mark?
You're the regular.
You know, so why don't you just run through it? Once you get it open, what only thing we're gonna do is we're gonna change closed session to the end.
Okay, roll call. 3 board members are here. But to call the meeting to order, and what we need to do is approve the agenda, changing the order of closed session and open session. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's keep rolling.
Steve's rolling with this one.
So we're doing the softball ad first.
We're gonna start with the item number 6, if that's okay. And then we can scroll down to do Bethel, the advertising ones after that one. And then we'll have it here for that one. So for agenda item 6A, the school board approved the capital projects list at the March board meeting. So it first came to the facility committee meeting, and then it went to the March board meeting. And at this time, we are requesting several revisions based on a continual analysis of the priorities for next year. The grand total does not change the budget allocation, but past practice has been to bring any revisions through this committee before moving forward. So I'm going to ask Rebecca if she can pull up the attachment. And I'm just going to ask John to talk through the revisions that he's requesting and why they have become a higher priority since when we first looked at this list last month. So John, would you mind orientating the board members to really the screens, kind of explain what the status column means? So they can reference, you know, the add ones as far as like what's new, and then just kind of walk them through what this document is describing for them.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Steve. So like Steve said, we made a few changes because this document is, ongoing for us as we evaluate the priorities in the district. So not a lot has changed. There have been a few big items, and one of them being an air handler for the field house at the high school. After consulting with NAMI and our flooring experts there at that building, we've determined that generally speaking, most of the time the HVAC contractors do not put dehumidification in gyms. They've actually never done it. So we've decided to remove the dehumidification HVAC unit from the field house, which brought us another $250,000 on that list there. So that was one of the major items. Otherwise, we're still, like I said, evaluating this list as we go. Status column.
So the column to the far left, John, if you want to talk through the add ones.
Sure.
Because obviously you talked through the one that has really created and opened up quite a bit of budget dollars.
Correct.
Go ahead, Mark.
Before we do, just a question about that. Could or would that have been covered with the ESSER funds?
So I'm not sure if that would have been I don't know if we could apply it to with ESSER funds. It already has ionization in it for pandemic component. So I don't know the rules revolving around ESSER funds for.
This is your condensation issue, isn't it?
This is for the floor being too humid and
How do you solve that problem? Thank you.
dehumidify. So,
And you're taking it out.
so again, our HVAC contractor, they don't put dehumidification in gyms, so we're going to control it in other ways. In fact, I just bought 4 or 5 48-inch fans, so we're going to keep air moving in there better, keep the temperature control better through cooling and heating. We did a little bit of that last summer too, where we actually applied heat and cooled the space to remove humidification. And Stalker flooring also came in last year, and removed a little bit of surface from the floor areas that were problematic. So it has settled down, the floor is better, and then we'll try and contain the humidity, like I said, is what we have.
Okay.
So the other ads, then the pool needs a new robot. Our electrician works on that robot vacuum quite a bit. More ads there again, starting at item number 19, lane lines in the pool need to be replaced. A big item is hot water heaters at middle school. Those are, as you can see, they're 15 years over lifespan expectancy. A maintenance truck, which we're in need of, that's to replace the 2014 vehicle. When we paused on the previous vehicle, we ran into problems where then the winter, we ended up cracking the frame on it. So we're just trying to be preventive again with the vehicles on the older vehicles there. It's great that we were able to add back emergency repairs for HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and roofing. Painting is what we like to do in the summer, so that's ongoing. We have decided to continue to hold on the LED projects for the energy saving projects that we talked about at the last facility committee. We have some smaller projects, again, their number, the Prairie replace exterior light, we're going to do that. Holding the LED. I'm not sure why the two carpet at middle school say hold. I have to review that quick. But then the HVAC unit at the high school and another LED. So again, continuing to review the projects. This is kind of where we ended up, and it should sit at 525. That's been our annual spend since I've been here.
Yeah, it is. So the major change was the $250,000 placeholder on the high school system. You can see that the majority of that, over 100,000, has been put into basically a repair line item to just monitor any repairs as they come through the year, with a few additional items that John picked off the list, the long-term maintenance list, like the truck that is in bad shape and a few other things. Those weren't on the original list because we were focused on the $250,000 system at the high school. But as John noted, when this list was presented last month, there was still further research going into that. And so he's basically bringing back a pause on that and then pulling back a few things that didn't make the list, and then really holding off about $100,000 for repairs. The other thing that I'll just point out at the very top of this list, Rebecca, if you wouldn't mind sliding up. This is related to the next agenda item, is the Bethel Offices. We adjusted this. You can see in the funds adjustment column, we've continued to adjust based on actual quotes coming in. That's the next agenda item, which we'll talk through, but we did adjust the Bethel line to reflect the quotes that we received. So we're open to certainly any questions or feedback from the committee. But at this point, we would be requesting moving this forward to the regular board meeting to request, these revisions so that the rest of the board can approve them. And like I said, even though board policy gives Randy the authority to sign off on items under 25,000, so there's things on here that we actually don't need board approval on. It's just the past practice has been just to bring the whole list, even things under 25,000, so you can see the whole picture, and then to bring changes through this committee. So at some point, if the board prefers that we not do that, we can change what we've been doing. But we've been bringing things here that technically don't need board approval, really designed so you could see the big picture, I guess.
One item I wondered about that is on that wasn't taken off is the locking of the north doors for the Heritage Gym. I mean, I recognize the security issue, but are there other items that are a greater need that money could cover and do that another day? That was my thought.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Mark's referencing a line on there that says heritage, and this was one of our biggest challenges when really putting this list together in the first place, was that the existing middle school building and the existing heritage complex has very significant items on the maintenance list. So we were trying to avoid putting almost anything onto this list from either one of those locations until we could get through the community survey and the referendum process. We did talk about that one. John, of course, in his role of also leading safety in the district, has that safety lens that he brings towards things. I asked the same question you did, was like, is that an investment that somehow we could recapture? Are we investing this and then the funds would be gone? So why don't we let John just explain a little bit about that particular issue and kind of what you're seeing and if this system could be saved potentially if we, move to another location.
Sure. Well, in speaking with our contractor, we think we can repurpose the hardware that we put in there at the North Gym. And I had a little sticker shock on that one too. I realized it's expensive. However, I hear the requests from Dan Carter and the teachers when we have situations at the building. They're questioning me and wondering how they can be protected when we have drills and other incidents such as a lockdown or so that's how this item came about. And for me, like Steve says, it's challenging for me to remove or even consider items like this, knowing what could be happening with the building. So I did leave it on for safety and security.
Thank you. Any other questions on this list?
I would move approval of taking this to approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Next.
So a subset of the larger list is the Bethel Circle project. Just to back up a little bit, at a point last fall, we did have a quote from Vogel Brothers to create the 2 additional offices in the space that's currently designated as the records room. Basically, we would be creating a permanent office for the HR director who currently is rotating throughout the building. And we'd have an opportunity to create a closed-in office for our director of communications, who's kind of out in an open space. At that time, the facility committee asked us some questions about whether or not the design that we had a quote on fit into the longer term vision for this building. So we did work with Robin Savola, who's a member of the Epstein Ewan team, to make sure that the hallway that would go in and these offices that would go in would basically coincide with any version of a plan that might exist out here. So in the event that, let's say, one day the superintendent's office and Rebecca's office moved into those 2 offices, they would be fine. Because at some point, we don't want a long-term disconnect for Brian Grabarski from the rest of his team. And we know a longer-term realignment of this building might be necessary. So we're designing the 2 additional spaces that anyone could move in there when we decide what we're really truly doing out here. The committee then approved our request to go out for a community-wide request for proposal. We wanted to see if there were any local contractors interested in doing this, as well as the traditional contractors that you might see. We communicated this very widely. In fact, we sent it out to over 10,000 emails on our district email system. It really went together with the land purchase. So we put the two, we packaged the two together and really just blasted it out everywhere. We had a lot of interest. John and his team walked a lot of people through here. They did a lot of, emailing back and forth with the plans. We had quite a few people we were corresponding with, which was surprising for a relatively smaller project and how busy folks are. But in the end, we did receive proposals from Findorf, Vogel, and CG Schmidt. We did not receive any proposals from what you would view as like a local contractor. These three are all larger, very major contractors in the area. They all have community members who live here, who of course saw the communication from us and looked at that as an opportunity to bring it back to their firm and say, hey, Waunakee Schools is looking for some work. The other quotes are from vendors that we specifically work with in those areas. So as an example, North American Mechanical, Westfall Electrical, H&R Carpets for our carpeting. So the other ones are proposals that we would connect to whichever contractor this committee would recommend. So we would be connecting those to either CG Schmidt, Vogel, or Findorf. Now, if you get a chance to look at the three of them, you would know that the Findorf one is quite a bit lower than the other two. We've worked with Findorf on major projects in the district, and that has gone very well. We have a proposal from Vogel, and Vogel's the firm that the board has selected for the larger referendum work. But the Vogel proposal is higher than the Findorf proposal. So the question really for this committee is, do you want to approach this through the lens of, lowest qualified bidder, which is clearly Findorf? Or do you want to be consistent with your decision that was made with the larger referendum projects and select a firm like Vogel? Now, I would say, since we already went out for proposal, that did indicate to the contractors you were interested in seeing proposals from other firms, which is why the Findorfs and the Schmidts and the others invested their time into this. But you would have a situation where a contractor that we worked with before would be doing this project, while a contractor that we're currently working with on the larger project wouldn't be doing the work here. But that's the way the numbers have presented themselves. And at this point, we're looking for your feedback on what your thoughts are with what we got back.
Steve, on a high level, I didn't put them side by side, but it seemed the Vogel proposal had somewhat more included in the work. Am I correct in that?
So
I saw trenching and things like that. I didn't see any of that in the other two. Was there anything significantly different or enhanced?
So that was John's question as well, which is, why is there a big difference between the Findorf proposal and the other ones? We submitted the same design to all of them. We submitted the same scope to all of them. They all saw the same items at the bottom that we were pulling out. So like there wasn't any confusion about the NAMI or the H&R carpets or anything like that. So to me, it was very clear what we were asking for. So I didn't see any confusion about anything missing, but John, did you want to weigh in? Because I know you had the same thoughts.
No, I agree. I'm on the same page with that. There's the previous owners had something in the concrete below in the floor. Trough about 6 to 8 inches deep, whatever. It's the length of the floor. So they were all made aware of that trough, and they're gonna, each one that is gonna fill that in.
Okay.
Their proposal. There were some add-ons with the full proposal that the others just included as part of the project. So I think that's what also drove their bid higher.
I would suspect that, I think what we should do is go with the lowest responsive bidder. Findorf has done work for us. They've done a good job. I would suspect that we just go with the Findorf. It's not really tied to, the larger referendums. This is kind of a standalone project as we go forward. And as Steve said, we asked for proposals. So I would say that we go with the lowest responsive.
I would agree. They all had the same opportunity to look it over, do it.
And that was my thought. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't significantly more that was coming that the others just chose not to bid on. So
Is there any difference in the time when they're available to do the work?
We indicated that our goal was to get this going as soon as the board approval is done. So we did share our desire to get moving with it. So there wasn't any indication from any of them that it would be like 3 months away or anything like that.
I move we go with the Findorf.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, so for this agenda item, it's related to the softball advertising request. So at the last regular board meeting, you did hear from a parent and a volunteer who's actively supporting the girls softball program and is seeking to help make improvements to the facility. The individual brought forward a proposal to have advertising along the outfield fence. The motion from the board was to approve that concept, but to apply district standards for advertising. So Aaron has kept, the parent who is here has kept Aaron informed of the proposals that he's receiving for advertising. Aaron's been sharing it with Randy and I. The first 3 were ones that there would not have been any questions about. Then we received a 4th request, which we've attached here. And this gets into a topic where we felt we needed feedback from the board on as to locations that, of course, there's a variety of them in the community that serve non-alcoholic options and options that include alcohol. And so this is just one of many. We could have many requests in the similar range of this that would have advertising that might include a term like brew pub. Other examples could be Mr. Brews, right? There could be a request from Mr. Brews to do similar. So this isn't necessarily about the lone girl. It is about any requests that we would view as similar from organizations in the community. It's a difficult one to know because let's just say that Rex's innkeeper would like to have an advertisement out on the outfield fence. You don't see the word brew pub or anything like that in the title, but Rex's has a bar and so does Lone Girl. So it's hard to maybe accept one but not the other. And I think we would get questions from local businesses as to why would you accept this advertisement but not this one? Our policy on advertising is general in nature and certainly doesn't describe anything like this as violating our policy. But before we have advertisements out for public display on a softball field, outfield fence, we wanted some discussion on this topic. And Randy, did you want to add anything?
We normally kind of stayed away from things like liquor stores and some of those type of things out and advertising, but as Steve said, there's not really been a written guideline on it. Taking a look at the kind of the sample policy from the School Board Association, which is a piece that we'll have to eventually kind of get to here. And they give you options as far as like you don't alcohol sales,
Right.
which you then have to kind of decide where that line is. And obviously, Lone Girl is brews their own beverages. Rex's doesn't. Rex's Supper Club. I mean, how do you where's that line where you divide those? That's part of the piece that I think the conversation why Aaron brought that forward to Steve. So this is the piece it's relatively prominent. You'll see it as you drive by and attend any of the games. I guess from the standpoint of we just have to be cautious around that topic, particularly since that's also part of our code that we hold kids to. We want to make sure that we're sending a consistent message.
What if they would take out the brew pub? Okay with that?
That's the question we've kind of been kicking around, trying to determine where that falls.
Well, there's a challenge too, because unless we do a review of their finances and say, well, the greater it will take them if the business majority income is derived from the restaurant, but from what I've read, most restaurants, their biggest intake is from their beverage. And so, but the Lone Girl, Rex's, Buck and Honey's, they all have bars, but their feature business is the food business, from my estimation. And I would distinguish those kinds of entities from a multiplicity of bars that serve sandwiches and, side dishes. I don't think I'd like to see some sort of the traditional tavern advertising up there. You could look at the bowling alley. The bowling alley puts up the bowling alley. The name doesn't address anything, but again, a major function, they have a huge bar. I still lump them in with Rex's and Buck and Honey's, those kinds, because the business they're really promoting is. But to ask a business that does that to change their name, like Mr. Bruce, I guess I throw out what's in the name. A rose by any others, still a rose. We have a play we're putting on called Urinetown that the name is offensive to many, but it's the play itself is really a great play. And so I would hate to have them do this.
Not the current scoreboard order state, but the previous one did have Rex's Innkeeper advertised.
Yeah.
So it just was Rex's Innkeeper, nothing else on there, but so it would kind of maybe fall in line with that.
And then Aaron, just to add to this, also received over the weekend a request for an advertisement for a religious institution. So this is the 5th request. So the first 3, again, we felt were very easy to approve based on our prior practice. And then we had the 4th and the 5th one that we thought needed feedback on. And obviously, when you get into religious institutions, there are certainly legal issues, just like when you rent out facilities, you cannot make a decision that you're not going to rent facilities to religious institutions as well. So we just wanted to make you aware of this, that this was the 5th request as well. along with the fourth request. And I think it does, speak to the need that Randy brought up about a larger advertising policy that isn't just one line on the bottom of a policy. So I think at this point, we're seeking some feedback because the softball group is looking to move ahead, right, for the spring season. So they're continuing to ask Aaron, do you view a business like, Lone Girl in the same vein as Mark just described, but do you want any words related to like alcohol removed? So if it just said like Lone Girl, rooftop restaurant, that's no different than saying like Rex's Innkeeper, or are you okay with this advertisement as requested?
I would definitely take out the group hub. If it's a restaurant or something, something like that. I don't think I'd have a problem with that. To Mark's point, I think Mr. Brews is basically a bar. Because they're, you go in there, you got 67 different beers that you can choose from. And that's the attraction there. Here, they're more restaurant or.
So one of the biggest expanding businesses in Waunakee is Occupy. If they want to advertise to it, them, put it up and then if want what their business is, delete it. I mean, those who attend, most would know what it is. What about that?
That's similar to. That's where the hard line is. It's just those, you're
The
starting to get
product.
into really gray areas there. It's how do you split that here?
It's not quite apples to oranges when you compare the sports advertising. And what I can't even say that they still don't do it, but I do know they removed cigarettes, and I thought they removed beer from advertising on television because of the nuance from it. I'm not sure these are advertising alcohol per se, but what their business is. I don't know.
The church piece has a separate level of it. We have another conversation about that. It's not up this morning.
Yeah, I guess with this one, I'd want to know what the legal ramifications are. For free speech, this could be free speech. And
Kind of the free speech, it's kind of those pieces, kind of at what point are you promoting that's an establishing religion, you're not teaching it, but are you promoting something?
Right.
On school property. So that's a question I have to ask.
For the Lone Girl one, I guess I support allowing local businesses to advertise if we're not promoting a product like an alcohol, cigarette. I mean, this is a great establishment, and I would support giving them the opportunity to advertise.
Well, and they do a lot
They do a lot
for donations purposes for a district. And if we say no here,
Right, I would hate to.
how can we accept anything else from them?
I would hate to exclude all of those entities, and it really is no different than Merck's or, they provide a lot to our schools. So I see no problem.
so would you take the group hub out?
No,
It's their establishment.
So then how would you turn down Mr. Bruce?
Why would you?
They serve beer. Their primary purpose is beer. It's not food. This is more of
Actually, if you go in there, they don't have a bar set up just to drink at a bar.
Mr. Bruce.
Mr. Bruce, they're set up tables for sandwiches and that sort of thing. And I mean, maybe people go in there just for the sampling, but
And they want these added to, these are going up right away. Is that part of what they're trying? to
Yeah,
do?
fairly quickly.
Softball
I'd like to
here.
get these up before the season's over.
jumping to the church one, unless it's illegal to do so as a public entity, I would say, why not? In fact, the more we get up there, the more we're not promoting one, but more. And, to me, yes, it's a religious business, but it's a business and they're, trying to promote their church. So I guess I wouldn't, they're part of the community too. I wouldn't see why, unless it's illegal to do so, why we would.
Well,
refrain.
I just bring us back to when we set up K4, there was a religious statute in St. John's, and there was somebody that came to us,
Freedom from religion.
Freedom from Religion Association. was
Yeah,
gonna
I
sue
think
us.
this,
So this one, I think, is a stretch.
Yeah.
I can live with the lone girl. I'd prefer that they take out the brew pub. But, this one,
Yeah, and maybe what it is, maybe what this needs to do is, and this is obviously we've had a good conversation here. It needs to make sure that we have the rest of the board understanding what our conversation is. So
absolutely.
I don't want
Yes.
to I just don't want to approve it here and then just.
No.
move on. I think I should move the conversation to the full board. We're going to delay it a couple of weeks there, but I think that, and that at least gives us a chance to look at some of the policy pieces. Let me pull up the sample policy from the School Board Association too, and that may be a piece that you may want to see side by side to see kind of what a current policy could look like, so we can do that.
Yeah, because we're gonna probably have to draw a line, because then you got Gold Nugget, you got Rick's Bar. I mean, are they different than, and where does Mr. Bruce fall in that list of
Right.
primary alcohol and an event place?
So should I tell Rob Fall we're just gonna hold on both of these?
Tell them you're going to hold on both of them for further consideration, but we'll have a discussion at
Okay, I'll do that.
I would see if Long Girl would remove
We can just have restaurant, rooftop.
the rooftop restaurant
Space.
event space. If they would,
and ask that question.
I still think that needs to be forward to the board season.
but I think you can ask the question.
Right,
So that at the board meeting, because really their logo, Lone Girl, people in this community know what Lone Girl is.
Steve, you and I can just take a look at the policy piece. And
Thank you.
we'll expedite that forward.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Aaron.
Eric.
Would the policy committee be able to look at this and come up with some recommendations before we meet or not?
Either have the committee or I'll just take it to the full board.
So you need a motion to go into closed session and then I'll shut everything down.
So move.
second.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Do we need individual votes on that? Roll call vote?
Shall this recorded as a roll call? We heard everybody's vote.